The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the quiet, not the peaceful kind either. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you aware that something has changed. The ceiling above me, smooth alloy panels with faint blue light seams, looked the same as it had every morning since I'd moved into the apartment on Helio Station. But the air felt occupied. I turned my head. Someone was lying beside me. For half a second, my brain refused to process it. I was a human logistics analyst living alone on a multi-species orbital station at the edge of council space. I didn't have family here. I didn't have a partner. I had, however, hired a maid the previous day through the station's official domestic services guild, mostly because my workload had doubled and my apartment looked like a disaster zone. The woman beside me was definitely not human. Her skin was a pale opalescent silver, faintly iridescent in the low light. Delicate ridges traced her cheekbones and forehead like ornamental filigree. Her hair, or what served as hair, fell in long, soft strands that shifted color subtly as she breathed, from deep violet to midnight blue. She wore a simple service uniform, though it was wrinkled now, as if she'd slept in it. In my bed, my heart slammed into overdrive. I shot upright so fast the sheets tangled around my legs. The movement startled her. Her eyes snapped open, large, luminous, and entirely alien, and she scrambled backward until she nearly fell off the mattress. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, her voice musical but strained. "I didn't mean to frighten you." "That makes two of us," I managed, clutching the blanket to my chest as if modesty still mattered at this point. "Why are you in my bed?" She froze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The station's environmental hum filled the silence. Then she lowered her gaze, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "My name is Esselin," she said softly. "I am of the Illyri caste, and I believe there has been a misunderstanding." "That's one way to put it," I said. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to ground myself. "You're the maid I hired yesterday, right?" "Yes." She nodded. "Assigned to your residence for cleaning, meal preparation, and household maintenance." "Great," I said. "Excellent. So, why did I wake up next to you?" Her shoulders tensed. "Because the contract required it." I blinked. "The contract required you to sleep in my bed?" She hesitated, then nodded again, slower this time. "Yes." "That can't be right." "It is," she said quietly. "At least, it is according to my people's understanding of the agreement." I swung my legs off the bed and stood, needing distance, needing space to think. Helio Station was famous for cultural mishaps, but this felt like a new level of bureaucratic failure. "Okay," I said, forcing myself to breathe. "Let's back up. Yesterday, you came over, cleaned the place, barely spoke, and left. Everything was normal." "Yes." "And last night?" Her fingers tightened together. "I returned at the assigned rest cycle." "I didn't authorize that." "You did," she replied, her tone apologetic but firm. "By signing the full-service domestic care contract." I stared at her. "That's just a standard form. Everyone uses it." "Among humans," she said. "Not among the Illyri." I exhaled slowly and pulled up the contract on my wrist console. Lines of legal jargon scrolled past my eyes. Domestic upkeep, nutritional support, personal care. Personal care. My stomach sank. "What does personal care mean to your people?" I asked carefully. Esselin swallowed. "It means ensuring the well-being, safety, and psychological stability of the household's primary occupant." "That still doesn't explain the bed." "For my species," she said, "sleep proximity is a core method of monitoring stress, health, and emotional state. We are empathic sleepers. Our neural fields synchronize during rest." I stared at her. You're saying you were monitoring me? Yes, she said. I detected elevated cortisol levels and irregular neural patterns when I first met you. Indicators of chronic stress. The contract obligated me to intervene. By climbing into my bed. Her ears, small, fin-like structures near the sides of her head, flattened in what I guessed was embarrassment. I should have explained. Yes, I said. Yes, you really should have. We stood there, awkward and silent, until I finally laughed, a short, incredulous sound that surprised us both. This station, I muttered. I swear. I rubbed my face and glanced at the chrono. I was already late for my shift. None of this felt real, but it was very much happening. Okay, I said. No more surprises. You don't sleep in my bed again without asking. Ever. She nodded immediately. Understood. And we're revisiting this contract later. Yes. I grabbed a jacket and headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I added. I wasn't harmed, just startled. Her expression softened. I am glad. The day should have reset everything. Work was busy, meetings ran long, and by the time I returned home, the morning incident felt distant, almost absurd, until I opened my door. The apartment was immaculate, cleaner than it had ever been. The air smelled faintly of something herbal and calming. A meal sat warm on the counter, plated with careful precision, and Esselin stood near the window, hands folded, waiting. I hope this is acceptable, she said. I prepared food based on your nutritional records. I hesitated, then nodded. Thanks. We fell into an uneasy routine over the next few days. She cleaned. She cooked. She stayed quiet and less spoken to. And she kept her distance at night. Mostly. I noticed things, though. How my headaches faded. How I slept deeper, even alone. How my constant anxiety, the background hum I'd lived with since taking this posting, quieted. One evening, after a particularly brutal shift, I found her sitting on the floor in the living area, eyes closed. What are you doing? I asked. Meditating, she said. Your stress levels spiked today. You can tell? She nodded. Even without proximity. I sank onto the couch, exhausted. Why do you care so much? She opened her eyes and looked at me. Because I was created to. That made me pause. Created? She tilted her head, considering. Perhaps conditioned is the better word. That night, curiosity outweighed caution. Tell me about the Illyri, I said. She hesitated, then sat across from me. We are a servant caste species, she said. Engineered centuries ago to support the founding council races. Emotional attunement, compliance, care. You were engineered? I asked. Yes. For loyalty. For service. The room felt colder. And you're okay with that? I asked. Her gaze dropped. It is all I have known. Something in my chest tightened. That contract. Does it bind you? Yes, she said simply. Until termination by the client. I stared at her. You thought sleeping beside me was just part of the job. Yes. And if I'd expected more? Her voice was barely audible. Then I would have complied. Anger flared, sharp and sudden. Not at her, at the system that thought this was acceptable. We're changing that, I said. She looked up startled. Changing what? The contract. Your status. All of it. You cannot, she said. The council. I'll find a way, I said. No one gets to own you. For the first time since I'd met her, Esselin looked truly afraid. The next weeks were a blur of bureaucracy, legal filings, and tense meetings. The Domestic Services Guild pushed back hard. The council's representatives spoke in circles about tradition and efficiency. Asilin watched it all from the sidelines, quiet, uncertain. One night, I woke to find her sitting at the foot of my bed. I didn't jump this time. I thought we agreed. I started. I am not touching you, she said quickly. I needed to speak with you. I sighed and sat up. Okay. What's wrong? If you continue, she said, they will penalize you. Revoke your posting. Possibly worse. I know. Why do you persist? I met her eyes. Because you deserve a choice. She studied me for a long time. You are the first human who has ever said that to me. That's horrifying. She almost smiled. The ruling came a few days later. The council, under pressure from human advocacy groups and faced with uncomfortable publicity, agreed to reclassify Illyri domestic workers as independent contractors. Optional service protocols. Explicit consent clauses. Aislin's contract dissolved. She was free. The night it happened, she stood in my living room, uncertain. I am no longer obligated to remain, she said. I know, I replied. You can go anywhere. Do anything. She nodded slowly. And if I stayed? I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Then it would be your choice. She stepped closer, not into my bed, not into my space, just close enough to matter. I would like that, she said. That night, I slept alone again. But for the first time, it felt like a beginning, not a misunderstanding. And sometimes, when I wake, I still feel the quiet. Only now, it's peaceful. Months passed and Helios Station changed, subtly at first, then all at once. The council didn't announce the reform with fanfare. There were no speeches, no banners. Just a quiet update to the registry, a rewritten clause in the Domestic Services Guild Charter, and a ripple that spread outward through thousands of lives that had never been allowed to ripple before. Aisling took a long time to decide what she wanted to do next. Freedom, it turned out, was heavier than chains. At first, she stayed in the apartment, not as my maid, not as my caretaker, but as a roommate. We negotiated everything explicitly: chores, expenses, boundaries. She insisted on contributing, and I insisted she be paid fairly. The first time she received her own credits, unbound by obligation, she stared at the transfer confirmation for nearly an hour. I don't know what I meant to feel, she admitted. Try proud, I said. You earned it. She practiced independence the way she'd practice service, carefully, thoughtfully, with an almost scientific attention to detail. She explored the station's public gardens. She listened to music from a dozen species. She learned how to say no. That last one was the hardest. I noticed the change in her gradually. Her posture loosened. Her voice gained confidence. She began asking questions, not the deferential kind, but curious ones. About humans. About choice. About whether identity was something you were given or something you built. One evening, months after that first disastrous morning, we sat together watching the station's artificial sunrise bleed gold across the viewport. I used to think my purpose was assigned, she said quietly. Now I think it's something I choose each day. I smiled. That sounds like being a person. She returned the smile, luminous and real. Then I suppose I am becoming one. She never slept in my bed again, at least not out of obligation. There was no dramatic moment, no sudden crossing of lines. Just time, trust, and a mutual understanding that closeness meant more when it was chosen freely. As for me, my life shifted in ways I hadn't expected. I turned down my transfer extension and took a role advising interspecies labor reform. I slept better. I laughed more. The quiet no longer felt oppressive, it felt earned. Sometimes, when I wake up, I remember that first moment of shock. The fear. The confusion. The realization that something deeply wrong had been hiding behind a perfectly legal contract. I don't regret it, because that morning didn't just wake me up to a stranger in my bed. It woke me up to the truth that comfort built on someone else's silence isn't comfort at all, and that the most shocking thing about freedom is how gently it begins. Not with chains breaking, but with someone choosing to stay.
ChatGPT.